Welcome to One EMS. So I had this great interview with Dr. Jason Hayes, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and I got most of it here, but for some reason, when I went to download the recording, the intro was cut out. Like I started it, I messed up, something glitched, and it picks up with me talking about how we know in the political world and in the state of Georgia that the current lieutenant governor is not running for re-election. So there are many candidates that are running for election. And that's where this is going to pick up right here, right now with Dr. Jason Hayes running for lieutenant governor. And I asked him a bunch of good questions about EMS, what he could do to help EMS, and how he would address the problems in our field of emergency medicine. Now here's the interview with Dr. Hayes.
That seat has been recently not totally been vacated, but it has been known that they're not going to seek re-election. So there are a number of names in the hat, Dr. Hayes, for Lieutenant Governor. Before we get into the heart of what we're going to talk about, which is EMS and medicine and what's going on in Georgia, what made you want to run for Lieutenant Governor?
That's a great question. So actually, I've been exposed to public service my whole life. Mother, a retired nurse, that's how I got exposed to medicine. Father, my late father is a Navy veteran. Grandfather also was an Army master drill sergeant. He also was a school teacher. Grandmother was a school teacher. So public service is something that was instilled upon me at an early age. Most recently, ran for state rep in House District 49. If you're familiar, it's Alpharetta. Did a really good job as a first-time candidate. Got 47.2% of the vote. So I was like, well, why run for lieutenant governor? And I said, man, what's best? So my concern is not just Alpharetta. It's concern all of Georgia. And then, since we're, you're EMS and we're both in the medical field, Georgia's ranked 43rd in healthcare. We have a lot of individuals who could benefit from affordable health insurance. We are also at the bottom of the barrel for maternal mortality as well. We have a lot of things that's going on here in Georgia, and some counties, I'm sure you and your colleagues are aware, don't even have doctors there. So it makes it harder when you have a patient that's sick and you're just like, okay, where am I going to take them? And then the nearest hospital will be 50 miles away. You take them there, and then they can only do certain things. And then, so it makes it hard. So you end up doing a lot of stuff. I'm sure you guys doing a lot of stuff in the field that you're like, okay, we should be doing this, but we got to save the life. So it makes it hard, especially with hospitals closing right now. So we got to figure out a way to get doctors in areas that are underserved, and also keep hospitals open so they can at least do the minimum to keep lives open and stuff. So yeah, that's one of the main one. Education wise too, I feel like we need to bring back trade skill opportunities for kids. Some kids don't want to go to college. Like, I don't want to do that. So we have to do that and teach them about finance, small business ownership. So if they do want to go to college, it's great. You got those skills. If you don't, you can start your own business and be of service to your community.
And you can do both. You can get the skill and build in your community, and then get a degree later and do something else.
You can still do it. Also, small business ownership. I think that's something we need to focus on in all communities, rural, underserved as well. So those are the big things that I've been primarily focused on.
Okay.
And myself, I'm a small business owner, so totally understand, where people are coming from, especially when the pandemic was going on, which it still is, but it's better.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah. So let me ask you, in your career, have you primarily learned and practiced in city settings, suburb settings, or rural settings?
I've actually done both. Initially, I went to medical school in Meharry in Nashville. And then from there, I did my training at Baylor in Houston. And if you know Houston, that's urban. But I ended up working with the National Health Service Corps. And for about a year or so, I worked in Jackson, Tennessee. If you're familiar with Tennessee, that area is pretty rural. And then went from there. I went to Memphis and then Nashville as well. So I've done both. But recently, it's been, last 8 years has been suburban. I just say that. But I got experience in all settings.
So good, because I want to make sure we know what areas to talk about. Not if you, I try to avoid putting you in a position where like, well, I haven't really done that before.
Well, I grew up in a little town called Opelousas, Louisiana. So that town's about 25,000 large. So it's a rural, working class type of town. So I've pretty much seen a little bit.
Gotcha. You got to taste everything. Being that we represent EMS, and the thing that we want to talk about is there's a number of issues on the table. One is there's a massive shortage. And you touched on trade schools.
Yep.
And it was interesting to watch during COVID because I used to work with the school, and I'm in contact with a bunch of other schools. For a while, nothing went up. But I've heard reports from NPR that nursing school almost doubled their enrollments during COVID. EMS schools haven't. So what is something that you could possibly do or look towards as a lieutenant governor to help encourage more people to enter the field?
Absolutely. So I mentioned before about trade skills, including technical. Now I know we have like technical colleges and things of that nature, but my thinking is that put that back in high school, give students an opportunity, expose them early, because when kids leave high school, you sort of, I hate to say it, but we may lose them. If we can expose them early, whether if it's mechanic, HVAC, electrical, or whether I'm sorry, they're calling me.
Okay.
I'll be back in a second.
All right.
Yes, sir. Good. It was good. Sorry about that. But you understand, so you know what's going on.
Yeah. I do understand.
So your question is how to get we just got to bring technical programs back, and we have to start exposing our students, and things like career fairs I think are good. We need to start doing that in the school so we can pique students' interest. Again, you have some students that say, hey, I don't want to go to college now. I like the medical field. And we say, hey, man, this is a good way to, get started. And then if you ever want to go to college, or if you ever want to be a nurse or a doctor, you can still do that. You still have those options.
Right.
Honestly, I think that's the only way to do it, because what I don't like is how I think they're trying to profit off of students in the technical programs, like technical colleges. Nothing against the colleges, but that used to be in the high school, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know some areas have some career academies that some high school students can go to, and I know I'm emphasizing some a lot, but that's just the way it is. Some will offer EMT school as well, and I agree that it needs to be. We not only need to teach EMS, at least its entry-level positions in high school, we need to have a driving course with it. So when they come out of school, everybody can take that driving course. But you'll be a better driver. But now you're ready to get a job and be able to operate a big ambulance safely. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest holdups. Depending on the insurance company you get, they don't want to insure 18-year-olds, right? Because there's a lot of risk. Not every insurance company is like that, but that is a difficulty thing. But so I guess I got to ask, as a lieutenant governor, how could you encourage schools and encourage this to get into the trades, into the high schools?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I proposed to the Georgia Association of Educators, not just proposed, but to do, is that I want to commission a committee where we can actually get the educators, get the science teachers, get the skills teachers, get the career academy instructors, get everyone in the room and recommend a progressive curriculum. And really with these curriculums, I mean, we get that together. Like I said, you set a timeline, long-term goal, short-term goal, and then we can pick a couple of high schools where we can beta test what we're doing, and then get the data back from that, and everything looks good. Just roll it out throughout the whole state. Because I'm hearing the same thing in South Georgia as well. Georgia, I was at Advancing Georgia's counties, and a lot of people were saying this same thing. And it doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans, they're saying the same thing.
Right. And shortage is shortage.
Shortage is shortage. I mean, EMTs, firefighters, nurses, I mean, everything. And, again, I think just the way how culture is now, children are now exposed to a lot more social media, the gaming. So, kids are kind of sheltered in a lot of ways, in my opinion. When I was growing up, I mean, we had a little bit of everything in high school. If you wanted to do trade, we got that. If you wanted to go to college, we got that too. So, again, I just don't want the system to profit off of students when they're coming out of high school and then they're ended up going into debt to learn something that could have been exposed to in high school.
That I like it. I like it, and that goes up to education money. Now I know Hope does do some payments for nursing and for medic and EMT and all that up to a certain point. I actually had it when I went through in '96. Hope had just come around, and at
Oh,
that
really?
point, it was essentially a rubber stamp of you went in and said, okay, I mean, as long as you qualify. Once you qualify, I was like, oh yeah, done, because I was giving back to the community. So at
Right.
that time, it was if you got EMS or nursing school or anything like that, Hope would pay for it. And I was in a pilot program at the tech school in Athens to do that then. But now, Hope still does things if you go through the tech schools, but there's a lot of extra. There's a lot of extra paperwork. So if you go to a private school, say, I just want to do EMS, that's private, right? And if they're not accredited as far as the state or as far as the federal rather government goes, then they can't get this kind of money. What kind of incentive or education money could we come up with to get people into the field?
I'm glad you said that. So one of the things I was proposing is that we can make community college. I don't want to use the word free, but community college, sort of like a community college type scholarship where you get the first 2 years covered in exchange for young people, like much like healthcare type programs or teacher Peace Corps type programs, where
Community-based programs.
yeah, where you can do 2 years of service in an underserved or rural community. Actually, I did something similar. It's called the National Health Service Corps, and essentially, in exchange for 4 years of like scholarship, I actually worked in I mentioned before rural and underserved community and all that. So I think that's something I think a young person would love, especially if you say it's this community that you grew up in. It's a rural community, and you're like, okay, I can come back home and I would have my education paid for 2 years. I mean, you can't beat this, you know.
Right.
And that's the whole goal, in my opinion. I think if we could recruit and retain individuals in the healthcare field, whether it's EMS, nursing, medical doctors, or whatever, I think that's something that we need to do. And you know, as a lieutenant governor, you can commission these committees for this, and then get some legislation out of that. Get one of the state senate, because you're the president of the state senate. You can get one of the state senators to sponsor and or co-sponsor legislation where we can get this stuff passed. And
So,
mhm.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I,
money's there. Money's there. And I mean, obviously, we'd still need some more revenue as well, but there's some money there that we can utilize.
so some of the cautions there is with Hope, right? With Hope, you can get it. Hope will pay X amount of money. And what I've watched these schools do, like even when I went to a tech school in Athens, and they did a short session because they were testing it out, which was a valid enough session to get all the education. But then I had to get $600 worth of books at the bookstore.
Oh
We used
wow!
one of those books. Now they've extended it out to almost 2 years, depending on the school, because
Right.
Hope will pay for it. So now you're having to do like English and math, all this extra stuff, when really you just want to go in and get the medical skills. So that's something that I think we need to watch and be careful with.
Yeah.
Is I'm not trying to ever take away, but what I believe is happening is with the programs that we have now. Now, one, they're limited to stuff in the university system because that's the easiest way to get accredited with the federal accreditation boards and whatnot. But yeah, they're extending it, and it's like, well, we need medics in the field now. I mean,
Yeah.
EMT can be an 8-month class, advanced can be an 8-month class, 5-month class,
Right.
paramedic can be 2 years. So, and you're talking about in 3 years, you've gone from not being in the field to be able to work at each level while you're in school, and you can go away through paramedic school in about 2.5, 3 years, starting from zero.
Yeah.
That might be something to focus on.
Yeah. And you know, if we get this in the high school level and then we can bridge it over, into, community college or school. I mean, one thing, and I mentioned this about with police officers that, you do your year in the academy
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot, or in your case, your schooling, post high school, and then
Mm-hmm.
another year as a residency type program where you're actually working,
Okay.
supervised by someone like yourself. So, I'll just say EMT resident is getting the training. They're actually working. They're still getting a little salary. And then if they satisfy the criteria that you guys are teaching them in the field, take their test, they're ready to go the next year. They get an
Yeah.
outside pay because they're already certified and everything. So,
Yeah.
students learn that way. Like how you mentioned, they want to get their hands dirty and start learning.
Yeah. There's only so much you can teach in school, right? And if you're talking about like the high schools or grants or both, partnering with private schools is, I think, important. because there's a lot of good private schools out there that are filling the gaps that the tech schools can't cover. And
Right.
not every private school is made equal. I'm not saying that, but if we made any kind of funding available, that they have to meet criteria, jump through the hoops, but it doesn't have to be, well, just I know accreditation is the easiest thing to check box, but
Right.
now you're losing, right? You're losing out on it. And high schools are going to go, well, how do we hire a teacher for this? Well, they can partner with
That's right.
private school, but somebody has to get paid for their time,
Right.
and that's always the nitty gritty details, isn't it? There,
Absolutely. And that is the money component. And you know, when you look at the budget, I mean, like I said, there's a $3.2 billion windfall of extra money that we have. And I tell people that, well, you know, this is only also far that money can go. Getting more revenue,
right.
you know, negotiating with corporations. That's one thing I was telling people, is negotiating with corporations, even nonprofits. In our case, hospital systems, we can get them to come in and say, hey, look, you know, we'll support this program for X, Y, and Z, EMT program, nursing, to help get young students the education, starting from high school and pushing forward. And then we can get them out, you know, working and everything. So there are a lot of things we can do. And obviously corporations, hospitals, people want tax breaks. So, you know, you give them a tax break.
Yeah.
They want to invest. And I think at the end of the day, we have to be willing to invest in human capital. And that's one of the things that I do talk about. You know, we got to get, lack of a better, I'm not a politician, but I say we got to get the career politicians out, and we got to start bringing in people with some real life skills, real life education that knows, you know, what's going on behind the scenes to get things done and all that. And I think that's what's important.
I find that interesting that you say that, because I've always said we've got to get it away from keeping, because that's the axiom, right? I got to stay in power to make change, and now it becomes about staying in your position. Maybe is a better phrase for it. As opposed, I know some people are grabbing power, but
yeah,
you know,
and these politicians,
we got a job to do.
Yeah.
Right. And the job's not just to stay up there all the time. The job is to serve the people. And that, I know it's not an easy task, but it's still a different task. And I'm glad you brought up negotiations, because that's another issue that EMS faces. A major issue we face in the state of Georgia is Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement and insurance reimbursement on top of that. But I know specifically private insurance companies tend to follow the lead of Medicare.
That's right.
And if I understand it right, Medicare and or Medicaid, one of the two or both, they negotiate with the state for their rates. And we, as a state, are pretty lackluster on, you know, you're talking about 20 to 30% reimbursement for 911 and higher for non-emergency, but non-emergency only takes the ones that are going to get paid. So there's a definitely, I was at lunch today talking about this with some clinics. There's a definite group of senior citizens and people who can ride in a car, but they don't have a car and they don't have a ride, but they can't get on my ambulance because I have a stretcher. Medicare, Medicaid goes, nope, they can sit in a wheelchair. They can't ride with you, and they have no way to get help. And that's part of the problem. If I can't get reimbursed as a private ambulance company, I can't be in business to take you. I'd love to take you and help you.
That's right. That's been and I'm glad you're bringing it up from your sector, because I hear it a lot from doctors who take Medicaid or who want to take Medicaid. I'm a Medicaid doctor as well, and I can tell you, them reimbursement rates, you'll be out of business. You will be, and people tend to not understand that. They're like, "Well, you're here to help people." I said, "Yeah, but if we don't get paid to make our
keep the life right,
we won't be here." Well, it should be. I said, "Yeah, we won't be in business." So it's trying to get the public to understand that, and if you can think about it, the public has a hard time understanding it. Then if you have non-medical public service or non-medical politicians in there, they don't understand either. Like, for example, they passed this this law, this bill, I think it's called the Fair Patient Billing Act, and they said, you know, you can't surprise billing. And I was and then look, I said, well, wait a minute, what you mean surprise billing? I mean, people have to get paid. I mean, you, the EMS, EMT service, have to get paid. The doctor that's doing the anesthesia for the surgery, the surgeon. So it's not the healthcare system's fault. It's the insurance companies have to be a little bit more transparent with their customers and clients. It's not our fault, you know. So, you know, again, those are people passing bills. They don't have any idea what they're talking about. And same thing with Medicaid expansion. I'm for it, but I tell people, I say, when you're for it, we better make sure we have a healthcare system that's recruited and credentialed hospitals included, doctors who are recruited and credentialed, all healthcare personnel as well, but you have to raise the reimbursement rate. And they were like, well, Dr. Hayes, you're crazy. I said, no, you have to do that. Well, we should just pass it. I said, no, you just pass it. You have to be prepared for this. And I said, if you're not prepared, I said, people will have insurance, but then it'll be catastrophe insurance. They're just sitting there. And then for you as an EMS, you're going to be running people back and forth to the emergency room with heart attacks and strokes and saying, well, who's your doctor? Well, I got a doctor, but I couldn't get in to see him for a year because he's the only one that takes Medicaid. And oh, I can't go to this hospital because they don't take it. And you're like, so we got to get the right people who understand the system and what's going on and what we can do to try to fix it.
Now, you brought up a point about the public doesn't understand. From a governmental level, what can you do to help with the education of the public to see not just nursing and doctors in hospitals, but like yourself, a private doctor, and like myself, EMS, private EMS. Yeah. How can you help educate the public on what's really going on?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be a public health initiative, and Georgia Department of Health will have to get them pushing that, and we also have to start mandating these insurance companies to start educating, and I say their patients, but our patients, on what they're dealing with. I mean, same thing with they have these high deductible plans. What's a PPO? What's a HMO? These things are going to have to start telling people. And also, in a lot of ways, we'll probably, but just have to start being transparent about what our costs are as well. So people can be aware, especially you mentioned with the ambulance rides. And I know with, sometimes with Medicaid or whatnot, they have a certain amount of rides and different things they can go with, because we don't want people abusing the system or whatnot. And unfortunately, I know but it happens. Yeah. It happens. Making sure that people are educated about it. So it's going to require, I don't want to say an overhaul, but we'll have to definitely go in and make a big time assertive push to get things changed. And
it's a remodel, if you will. The house will stand, but we got to gut it.
The foundation stays there, but remodel. And that's right. We need the right people there that understands that. Because as of right now, we have I think 2 doctors maybe in the legislature. One of them's anesthesiologist, and another one I believe is obstetrics and gynecology. But at the end of the day, OBs, they really don't deal with emergencies other than obstetrical and anesthesiologists. They're in the hospital. They don't really.
Yeah. And it's great that they have their specialty. It sounds like if you make it to lieutenant governor, maybe you should have a medical advisory board that have nurses and medics and doctors from every while to really help guide. Because there was a well-meaning bill that was passed a couple years ago. They nicknamed it the cancer bill, and it was to get firefighters cancer insurance, because major studies had shown that this smoke inhalation, all that can lead to cancer. It was a great intention. The guy who authored the bill ended up talking to him on the show I was doing back then and interviewed him. And he's like, I went to firehouses and talked to them. They all thought it was great. It's like, what firehouses? And basically just right there in Fulton County, which is Atlanta Fire, which is great, but it's a well-funded, big service. It's like, but your wording says all fire departments, including the 90% of Georgia is covered by volunteer fire services. And what is brought to my attention by a chief in a county where the county commissioner said, no, we're not paying for that. I mean, it's volunteer, and you're talking about, $10,000 to $20,000 a year per station for the covered volunteer firefighters, and they didn't have the money, and it was well intended without doing the research, and that's where information. I mean, you've hit on a couple times. Information is important. Understanding the realities of what you're trying to do in the medical field is very, very important.
Absolutely, and at the end of the day, you're going to need people that are in the medical field that do these things and understand it. That's where it comes down to. So, we say things like representation matters, and it really does. And one thing that's good about me is the same way I am even with my patients, is that I always try to keep an open door policy or try to be accessible. So if there's a situation where you're like, hey, doc, we need to look at this, then you can call my office and say, hey, Dr. Hayes, boom, boom, boom. And I'll say, okay, put together a committee and get it done. Because at the end of the day, medical personnel, even myself as a doctor, we assess things, and we put together a plan. And I tell a lot of the voters, we are a results-oriented field, and we have to be, because if we don't, people die. So
Yeah.
We have to be, meticulous and look at all of the factors involved. And you mentioned it, research. Pretty much been doing that my whole life. Research papers, articles, things of that nature. You got to gather data and be able to assess things. Great thing about me is that I also have a master's in public health. So biostatistics, epidemiology, that's stuff that I do. I've done an internship at the CDC. So, I'm someone that could easily pick up the phone or physically go over there to the CDC, pick up whatever data. I could personally analyze it and also explain it to a team or work with a team and then come up with some decisions and everything. So
Gotcha.
it comes down to a benefit, yeah.
Now, two of the other things that we are facing is with EMS, it's not really a career. The pay is very, very low. I'm just going to ask you a
Yeah,
question.
I was looking on that. Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. The
Good.
pay.
Coming out of school, and I'm not necessarily asking what you pay nurses, but in general, coming out of school, what do you think nurses make per hour?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. My ex-wife was a nurse.
Okay, all right.
I remember back in 2007, she was telling me, now she was a VSN RN.
Okay.
This was 2007 back in Texas. $23 an hour, but that was for new nurses coming out.
Right, okay.
Don't know exactly what it is now. I had to double check.
It's probably in that range, 23 to 25.
Still is that? Okay.
So what
I
do you
don't know
think?
how much y'all are being paid, man, and it kind of guesstimating.
It just got
Hours.
up to, after COVID, some places are paying between 20 and 30 an hour.
Okay.
But for the long before COVID,
It's
it was
15
nurses could come out and do 20, 23 an hour,
Yeah.
and we'd be getting $12 to $15 an hour
That's
to
what I
do
thought. 15.
similar positions. And it is tough that way. It is starting to step up because of the shortage.
Yeah.
But there's still many places that hire an EMT. Now there's three levels: EMT, A, and paramedics. And paramedics top, A is middle, EMT is the entry level position.
Okay.
And EMTs in some places still are making $10 an hour, and you can go to Zaxby's and
Really?
make 12 to 15.
Oh,
yeah,
no, that's not right. I mean, you're dealing with you need a little bit more.
Right. And part of it, see how it all circles around, right? Part of it's that coming out of school, not enough people are coming out of school. Then you've got the reimbursements. I mean, if we aren't making the money to pay the staff enough money, we can't give raises and those kind of things. It's tough.
See, I'm glad you're saying this because, I'm talking to these other candidates that are state reps and like, Dr. Hayes, the money is there. And I've looked at the budget. I said, no, it's not. I said, at the end of the day, when you look at the budget, it comes down to revenue and expenditure, just like a business. And you look at the budget and a good bit comes from personal taxes. Less comes from corporations. And then you have federal funds, state funds, county, but that stuff comes from taxes. And so at the end of the day, what I tell everyone, including my state rep folks, I tell them, I said, the state has to develop ways to get revenue, and we get more revenue and make the state more profitable, then we become less reliant on taxing people and everything like that. And
well, I mean, look at Colorado. I mean, I'm gonna say legalized weed brought in a ton of money for them that they could turn around and commit to community. And if you made it more of like a healthcare savings for each individual. I mean, you can make it a person over 50.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of little nitty-gritty that we're oversimplifying. But if you made not the finances for the hospital specifically or for no one specifically, but for each individual citizen, then part of that reimburses no matter how you take it. If a private ambulance takes a person, that can be reimbursed for that trip. There's definitely the money's not there, but it's when it is there. Let me tell you something nowadays. When the current governor did this bonus for first line responders, right? Police, and waved his banner. Look at me, $1,000 bonus for everybody got excited. And it was a massive 2-step process that was very clear as mud. And we started back in October I've got 2 companies that I run that we started filing, and we had one person, that's all they did. It took until now the filing closed in December. They did extend it out because there's so many issues, but it took until where were we in May? In April, we finally started getting deposits in to give the bonuses to our people. However, they had to be taxed. So they lost part of that bonus. Yep. And not everybody got it put in. And we're still having a problem with 2 more people. And I know I keep that name. And there are still fire departments who have put in that still don't have it. You know, so it was just a almost in our society, in our industry is the word I was looking for. In our industry, we just felt like that's virtue signaling. And that's the last thing in medicine you ever want is, I mean, you know, Dr. Hayes, you don't go to your patient and go, oh, you got stage 4 cancer. It'll be okay. No, it won't be okay.
No.
And that's what the bonus felt like is like, oh, there's nobody in the field and there's no career. Here's a bonus that you can't have. So what?
Wow.
That hurt
Political ploy. Political ploy. At the minimum, goodness, man, they should have at least made that tax.
It should have just easy and tax free, right?
Yeah, that's right. Tax protected, tax free. And I don't know, man. These guys, they, I don't know, man. The Department of Labor has been having issues as well, and I know all of that factors into it as well. So I'll be looking to get another labor commissioner as well, and it's a lot of government bureaucratic red tape. People are tired of this. I'm tired of it too as well. You know, this is why we need results oriented people. You know,
so I hear you. You're saying overthrow the government. I'm with you. Let's do that.
We do. We need that. We definitely need that. Yeah.
And those are
health insurance. I meant to ask that to you as well. Like, how are you? How are in your industry? How are y'all dealing with health insurance, like obtaining or even benefits as a whole?
Okay, so for my employees, we're a small enough company that we don't have to do benefits, and we can't really afford it because we are not strictly, but mainly, basically, we take our Medicare with a few Medicaid, and we have to build our budgets off of what we know will be reimbursed. So we pay very well, or as well as we think we can pay. So we pay above the average for the industry, but it bounces off with we can't really do insurance for people. And we're still looking at it, but it's tough. You have to make. I can pay you $15 an hour and half your insurance, and then you're still paying insurance out of what I'm paying you, or I can pay you $20 an hour and maybe you can get something in the marketplace, but it's your choice. And it's tough. And there are companies out there that are doing it all, but you're talking about, then that's what employees don't understand. It's like, oh, I'm paying you $20 an hour, but really I'm paying $30 to $35 an hour because of all the benefits and stuff. And it's everybody's kind of in a bind of how do you attract them with that?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I was proposing with Medicaid expansion is to allow small businesses, the owners and the employees to have access to it. In addition to, obviously, we mentioned the other behind the scenes things, but that's important because it helps you to compete with other businesses and everything. And that's important. I'm a small business owner as well. And I can tell you it's hard to get health insurance. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a doctor. So what? I can't even get it. And those are things that, you know, if you have people in the legislature or lieutenant governor who do not understand what it is to be a small business owner, they won't represent us. And that's what we really need. We need that representation in the state legislature, executive levels as well. So when we come to make decisions, we factor that in. One of the things I would like to do is to have a Georgia level small business association to help us. You know, myself, I'm a doctor. I have an MBA, executive MBA. I can reasonably maneuver through things. I have an accountant, but if you're someone that's a small business owner and you're trying to do it on your own, you don't have a business degree, or you're trying to find the right accountant to work with you, it can be hard. So, you know, we need to have that Georgia level small business association. You can walk in and they can help you start a business plan. And same thing I want high school students to learn about a business plan and how do I get funding and who can help me? Do you have accountants that can work with me or attorneys and whatnot? Things that can help us. And then benefits. We mentioned that benefits package as well to discuss that. How do I get health insurance? It's hard. So those things are important.
Right. And that's something my partner and I do is we take on new ambulance companies or people starting ambulances or anybody who wants to listen to us, and we help coach them and guide them because there's a lot of things out there that are available that people don't know about. And I'm sure there's tons of stuff that he and I don't know about.
Yeah.
And that's part of education. And I think it'd be nice periodically, not nice, I think it's actually really needed periodically for the Senate and the House and the government, whoever, to invite experts in EMS specifically up to the Capitol to talk about the issues, to say what's going on. Fire is different than EMS. A lot of people don't know that.
It sure is. I was talking to some EMS in Augusta. We were out there. They're telling me the same thing that you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, and we get along great. And a lot of fire does EMS and vice versa, but it is two separate trains of thought. And government doesn't seem to know that. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
And then I'll let you promote yourself here a little bit. With it being a hard barrier entry to get into our field, and with no retirement, because the firefighters have retirement, the police have retirement. We don't have retirement. And Georgia EMS Association has been working on that privately, but from a governmental standpoint, we don't have that. So it makes it hard as a career. And we're a right to work state, which can make some things hard. Do you think that we need to invest more into programs that would incentivize people, like we talked about with the education, or help and support private companies and those kind of things, or do we need to bring in unions?
That's a good comment. I would like to do both, actually. The bonus that I like about the union is that can actually help individuals to an extent as far as getting your voice out and some representation, but then incentivizing, I think, is important. So we can kind of do both, where the worker or your industry is still represented without being taken advantage of. I think would be important. So I'd favor both, kind of mix in the blend, because I do see where unions are important, but I also see where incentivizing individuals to help them with benefits is important as well. And that, in my opinion, starts back in the high school level. We can get young people seeing all of their career options, and that way they can go in and pick whatever career they want. I mean, there are people that say, "Hey, doc, I want to be a firefighter." I was talking to a gentleman. Goodness, man, about a couple of weeks ago, he was like, "Doc, I'm telling you, man, when I was growing up, I just want to be a firefighter." I said, "Really?" He said, "Man, look, that's just what I want to do." and we have to let people still have their love for the firefighter, police officer, teacher, EMS. Sometimes, when we're young, we might be touched by someone, from that particular field, and say, "Man, that's what I want to do." Because I'm gonna say this too. Doctors and nurses, we're in the hospital, patients get sick, so we kind of have the benefit of someone. Let's say someone has a cardiac arrest. We have the benefit of them having a IV telemetry, so we just come in,
Gotcha.
do our thing, we walk out. But what you guys do, oh man, y'all are in the field. You see car accidents, gunshots, X, Y, and Z. I mean, there's a lot of hazards to what you do. I remember in New Orleans when I was in college, and I was doing some volunteer work. I was in New Orleans, doing volunteer work at Grady Hospital, and I was talking to some EMS, and they were telling me, "Yeah, doc, people get shot, and then sometimes we have to be careful because the other person might try to come by
and finish the job."
Finish the job, or they say, "Hey, if you touch him, the bullet is for you next," and you're like, "Okay, that's a hazard," And when you're looking at that, benefits are important. I mean, not only having health insurance in case you get injured, but also mental health, because you can get PTSD. Seeing patients in car accidents, gunshots.
That's huge.
Yeah. That's huge. I mean, my brother-in-law is a state police in Louisiana. And he would tell me stories, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." He said, "Yeah, man, first in the scene, I've seen people," and he said, "Yeah." He said, you wouldn't believe what I've seen in car accidents." I said, "Man, yeah, you really need to." Mm-hmm. So that stuff is huge. The benefits is a factor and everything like that. So credit to what y'all do, man. Much credit.
And it is interesting. Everybody's human, right? We're all human. We see a uniform, we see a badge, we think they're tougher, and some of us are, but we're still human underneath. And there's definitely calls. I went train versus pedestrian. You can imagine who lost that battle.
Oh, absolutely.
And the cops at that point were like, "Yeah, no, it's down there." And the firefighters were like, "Yeah, no, it's down there." And I didn't have the option to go, "Yeah, no, it's down there." I had to go deal with it. And somebody has to. I'm not, the state patrol and everybody does jobs that I don't want to do and can't do. But that's at the end of the day. I had a kindergarten teacher tell me, "Man, you're special. I couldn't do what you do." I looked her dead and I went, "No, you're special. I couldn't. I'd be eating some kids all day long if I had to teach kindergarten. I'd rather deal with that patient."
Yeah, so. That's kind of like with me too as well. Like pediatrics as well. I love kids, and they're like, "Why you don't do pediatrics?" I said, "Man, it's hard for me to see kids hurt and crying." Yeah. I said, "Why is that?" I said, "Oh man, it's different. It's different. It's different with kids, man. It's different." So, like pediatricians, I call them doctors. They deal with it all. They deal with it all, man. So it's interesting field, but people need to know what you do and what first responders like yourself do and all that, because a lot of people they don't know. They don't know.
Yeah, that's where we need help getting the word out and pushing it out. So here is where I'll make my disclaimer. I'm One EMS. I'm here to ask the questions and have discussions like this. I'm not necessarily endorsing you as a candidate, but for thanking you for your time here today, go ahead and tell everybody why they should vote for you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm someone, I don't call myself a career politician. I'm someone that I call myself a public servant. I have been exposed to public service my whole life. Grandparents, parents, educators, military service. Mother's a nurse. She's the reason why I became a doctor. For me, just always want to help people. So graduated top of my class in high school, did well in college, medical school as well. I've worked in underserved communities. I've advocated for patients in government and also outside of government as well. I'm a small business owner. I'm also someone that has a background in public health, small business ownership, have an executive MBA. And also, I'm someone that has run for office before, so I'm well liked in Democrat, Republican district as well. Because at the end of the day, for people, not necessarily a party. And when we say it like that, that changes the whole dynamic. And so we just have to get people on the same page. And I just want to make sure that we focus on what's important as Georgians, and that's the thing that's critical. So if you want to learn more about me, go to www.jasonhayes, HAYES4FORGA.com. And also you can text Dr. Dr. Jason, JASON, Hayes, HAYES, to the short code 90678. Pushing for education, healthcare, economic growth, making sure everything is good for all Georgians.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hayes.
Lieutenant Governor, Dr. Jason Hayes.
There,
yeah, gotta say.
You're right. We're on all social media. We are One EMS for everything One EMS, podcasts, videos, short bits, all that stuff. Dr. Hayes, for Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you answering my questions today.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you. Thanks for being patient with me too, as well. And, you know, had a medical emergency, but we took care of it.
Thank you.